And joining us this morning, Inside.com founder and CEO Jason Calacanis. Guys, good morning to everyone. Our top story today, the NASDAQ hitting another all-time intraday high this morning as tech, Jason, is really the story of this summer's rally. I wonder what you think is behind it and how long this will last.
Yeah, I mean, we have a pretty amazing resurgence here after we all thought the market would collapse in the last year, and that didn't happen. And what we're seeing is, you know, the big companies in tech, Google, Amazon, Facebook, and even Microsoft, a company we thought was going to go away, are all printing large amounts of money, investing heavily in M&A and in research. And many of these companies have 500 million to 1 billion customers using multiple products, something we've never seen. And so with all this cash, with all this user data, with all this R&D, companies like Apple, Microsoft, Google, Facebook, they're going for it essentially in printing money, but also in doing massive research and launching new products. We're living in an age of massive advancement, unlike anything we've ever seen.
Jason, isn't so much of this the story of pessimism overdone? I mean, Apple, you know, people were saying that's falling apart. Google has done better than expected. Go on down the line. People said, how much higher can Facebook go? And we're getting the answer. It can go a lot higher. And then on the other side, I mean, even GoPro has rebounded. It's up, I think, in the $15 range. You look at a few other companies like that. Groupon, which a lot of people had given up for dead. I mean, there are still solid ideas here. Yelp, I could keep going. There's still solid ideas here that have legs, even though they may not have taken over the world the way some people hoped.
Yeah, and you're really talking about two caliber of companies. You're talking about the conglomerates with money printing machines and let's call it $20 to $100 billion in cash or more, and who have multiple lines of business. So they're very resilient and they can invest massively. Then you have this other group of up-and-comers, whether you call it Netflix or Fitbit or GoPro, where their businesses are based on one product line. And what we're going to see over time is those one product line companies will either add multiple in a cash war chests, or they're going to become part of those bigger companies.
Jason, yesterday, Roger McNamee, in talking about the rally that we've seen in the NASDAQ, he picked up on a point that you just raised, which is perhaps there will be single stock movers within the NASDAQ, but that it's hard to find where the broad secular growth in tech is going to come from here forward. Where do you think it comes from?
Yeah, I mean, this has always been the question. We don't know which technology is going to break out, but we do know that if you look at where the investment is, VR and AR, massive investment by Facebook, Microsoft, and Google. And then you look at something like AI. Google is really, really spending money on AI, and Apple just made an acquisition there. And then you look at self-driving cars and autonomy and just transportation in general. Lyft tried to sell. They failed. They couldn't get the price they wanted. A little bit of a troubled company. But you do see a lot of investment in transportation from Tesla, which is now they're saying, hey, Elon saying, we're not just going to make cars. We're going to maybe do ride sharing or at least car sharing, more likely car sharing.
And, of course, Lyft claiming they weren't trying to sell. It's a little bit muddy exactly what was going on there. They hired Catalyst, but were they trying to sell? Were they testing the waters? What was going on?
If you hired George and Frank, you're trying to sell for the highest price possible. So let's call it what it is. You know, you don't show up to the dance in a really beautiful new dress unless you're looking for a date.
Speaking of companies that are expanding their product offerings, Amazon is reportedly ramping up its fight against Spotify, Pandora, and Apple Music. According to Recode, the e-commerce giant is developing a new ad-free music streaming service that'll cost just $45 a month, $4 to $5, I should say, half of what Apple, Pandora, and Spotify charge for similar services. The catch, according to the report, the service will only work with Amazon's Echo. Jason, over their skis on this one or not?
I think it's a good idea. If you don't have the Amazon Echo, I highly recommend buying it. It's really the first time you know, using voice commands for a computer actually works, and it works delightfully. And so adding a music service to it and putting it out there for essentially free. This is, you know, Amazon's big model is to make no money or to lose money on a service, but to build market share. I think it's going to work, and it's a great product. I mean, if you don't have it, it is the absolute best thing you could buy for somebody this Christmas or for their birthday.
What I don't get, Jason, is they already have Amazon Music that comes kind of for free with Prime. A lot of older songs, which guys like me can appreciate because a lot of the songs that I like are older. But if you're paying $4 to $5 a month, essentially for newer stuff and the more popular stuff, but it can only play on the Echo, how does that mesh with the other songs that you might have? How do you control that through the app? You're talking to the Echo. I mean, isn't there the chance that they're getting into the weeds a little bit here?
It seems a little bit like that, because if you pay just $5 more, you can have Spotify and put it on your mobile phone. So I don't get it exactly. There might be some partial information that we have that makes us feel a little bit confusing. But the bigger, the higher order bit here is that talking to your computer, you no longer look like a dork. Because it used to be when you talked to your computer, it didn't know what you were saying and you didn't get the actual payback. Now, you know, I'm sitting there with my daughter having breakfast. She says, what is this? My 7-year-old says, what does this word mean? And I say, Alexa, define the word indefatigable. And Alexa does the definition. It actually works. And it works better than Siri, and it's an open ecosystem. So if you look at what people are excited about right now, all the startups that I'm investing in, all the startups I'm talking to are thinking about machine learning and talking to computers and using that voice interface. So many of the startups out there are not thinking about the Apple Watch. That's kind of DOA. They're not even thinking about apps. They're thinking about talking to computers.
We know that you've been bullish on Alexa for some time. You talk about it quite frequently on this show, but on this music product specifically, if you're an artist and you're currently in negotiations with Amazon, which this story has the obvious caveat that finalized negotiations with artists and publishers are not done yet, what do you want from Amazon, and what do you get out of having a cheaper service available just through Amazon Alexa?
Yeah, I think it's going to be incremental music, and they're going to educate a whole bunch of consumers who wouldn't spend the $10 on Spotify. So, you know, you have to really love music, and you have to listen to music, let's call it 10, 20, 30, 40 hours a week or month, some large number to be willing to spend $120 a year, right? You have to get some equal value that you get from Netflix,
and
right?
It seems like economically, they have to be betting that you hear it on your Echo, and then you buy it somewhere else.
That's probably
if you're an artist, because otherwise it's not a good deal for you. You're essentially just giving the music away for less.
Yeah, and what if this is, you know, the first card we're seeing turned, and they put it on Echo, and then they say, hey, by the way, next year we see, would you like to put it on these other devices? And so, you know, there's always that possibility. And I think Spotify is one of those companies that we could see get bought by an Amazon or an Apple at some point, because they do have tens of millions of people using that service.
Finally, Jason, you recently wrote a column calling out Twitter and Jack Dorsey for not making what you called some much-needed changes to the platform. But we have had recently these reports of talks with Apple TV, obviously weeding out terror-related accounts more aggressively. Are they on the right path?
Yeah, you know, listen, I'm rooting for Twitter. I'm a fan of the service. I think many people in the technology business love the company. And Jack is a spectacular product person. I think he's, you know, because he's running two companies simultaneously, we're not seeing Twitter keep pace with their contemporaries. And that's a major problem, because in the technology industry, as we talked about, you have these very large companies like Google, Facebook, Amazon, and Microsoft moving at a very high velocity. Twitter is moving way too slow on product, and they've maxed out revenue, which is why the stock has just absolutely been crushed, and it's probably going to get bought. But, you know, the piece I wrote was basically there are some common sense ways they could solve harassment, and they could use real names a little bit more. They just have to execute better. And the product execution at Twitter is kind of a D. D minus.
It seems like a bunch of really good ideas to me. A frequent Twitter user. Did you get any feedback from Twitter on that?
Interestingly, I don't like to talk out of school. But I do have a lot of inside information, but I don't trade public stocks, so don't worry about it. But yeah, I got a lot of people from Twitter came back to me at very high levels and said, hey, this idea, and the basic premise was when somebody you don't know tweets to you, it blurs it out. And if the account was known for harassment, it blurs it out and says, hey, this could potentially have harassing information if there was a certain keyword that was a derogatory word or an offensive word, and you'd have to click it, and then it would unblur. So you'd blur it first, you click it, and it says, hey, this could be obnoxious, this could be harassment. Click it if you want to see it. That takes away a little bit of the edge of opening it up as a celebrity. All these precious snowflake celebrities who open up Twitter and hear that their movie sucks. It's like, well, what did you expect? You went on an anonymous platform. Well, they have to help those people, because those people are actually the interesting, unique asset Twitter has. They have celebrities and journalists and politicians on there all day. If those people get driven off, like Leslie Jones from the Ghostbusters series on Saturday Night Live was driven off briefly, they lose their core asset. And I think that's one of the dangerous things about these smaller, you know, single-digit billion-dollar companies here in the Valley is if they have one revenue stream and one product, they can just get knocked out like AOL, like Yahoo. They can just get crushed. So Twitter is on the precipice, and they need to get focused.
Good. Interesting perspective, Jason. We are going to talk to Dick Costolo later in the hour, try to get his views on the things that you just mentioned.
They should have kept him.
That's coming up in about 20 minutes. Jason Calacanis out west. Jason, thanks. Good to see you as always.
My pleasure.